They told her monsters didn't exist. But every day at Blackthorne High, Ari felt them watching. Wolves behind human eyes, witches hiding spells beneath perfect smiles. She wasn't supposed to belong to either side. Half witch, half werewolf. And if anyone found out, she wouldn't survive the week. She learned early how to stay invisible, lower her gaze, swallow her power, pretend her heart didn't race when the moon rose. Then he walked into her life. The future alpha. The boy who looked at her like he almost remembered something he wasn't supposed to. Her wolf recognized him instantly. Her magic screamed run. Because he wasn't just dangerous. He was her fated mate. And he had no idea they'd already loved each other once. Behind them stood a rival who wanted him at any cost. Even if it meant exposing Ari. Even if it meant killing her. In a school divided by magic and bloodlines, one secret could start a war. And Ari was running out of time. To choose between hiding who she was, or unleashing a power no one was ready to face. This is not a love story meant to be safe. This is what happens when destiny finds you anyway. She learned early that survival depended on silence. Not the quiet of obedience, but the practiced stillness of someone who knew every sound could betray her. In the halls of Blackthorne High, footsteps echoed like warnings, and she counted them without meaning to, already bracing for what might follow. Blackthorne was divided long before anyone admitted it. Lockers on the east wing carried sigils scratched into metal, marks only witches noticed. The west wing smelled faintly of iron and pine, a scent that made her wolf stir uneasily. Teachers pretended not to see the lines, but everyone else obeyed them. She obeyed them too because she had been taught to. Her mother's rules lived in her head like commandments. Do not bleed, do not rage, do not cast, do not shift. Above all, do not be seen. Each rule had a reason, though none were spoken aloud anymore. She kept her eyes down as she walked, dark hair hiding her face, fingers curled tight around the strap of her bag. Magic hummed under her skin, restless and sharp, while her wolf pressed from deeper inside, always listening. Balancing them felt like standing on glass, and today the glass felt thin. Started with a sound. Laughter, low and confident, rolling down the corridor like a challenge. Her steps slowed before she meant them to, heart answering with a traitorous flutter. She knew that voice even after all these years, even buried under new strength. He stood near the trophy case, surrounded by other werewolves, tall and unmistakable. Power clung to him the way heat clung to fire, effortless and dangerous. He had grown into himself, shoulders broad, presence commanding. The future alpha of the West Wing looked nothing like the boy she remembered. She told herself that was good. Forgetting him had been necessary. Remembering him now would only fracture what little control she had left. Yet her wolf lifted its head, recognition blazing like pain, and she felt the pull begin. She turned away too late. His gaze caught hers, sharp gray eyes narrowing as if something in him had shifted. Confusion flickered across his face, then irritation, as though she had broken a rule he could not name. The moment stretched, fragile and charged. Her magic reacted first. A flicker of heat sparked along her spine, invisible but dangerous, and she swallowed hard, forcing it down. Around them, lockers rattled softly, metal complaining under unseen pressure. No one else noticed, but she did, and panic followed. She moved past him, breath shallow, counting steps again. 1, 2, 3. If she reached the stairwell, she could breathe. If she reached the stairwell, the feeling might fade. Did not. Behind her, she felt him turn. She did not look back, but awareness prickled along her skin, every sense stretched thin. Her wolf paced, restless and alert, whispering a word she refused to hear. She clenched her jaw. Fate was a lie told to people with choices. She had none. She had only rules and consequences, and the knowledge that if he remembered, everything would unravel. The day continued with cruel normalcy. Classes blurred together, chalk dust and murmured spells on one side, controlled aggression drills on the other. She stayed neutral, invisible, answering questions with careful precision. Teachers praised her discipline, unaware it was fear. At lunch, she sat alone as she always did. The rival found her there, eventually. Everyone did. The girl's smile was sharp, eyes too bright, attention fixed on the West Wing table. Possession radiated from her like a promise of violence, and when her gaze slid to her, it lingered. "You're new," the girl said lightly, though they had shared classes for months. "Or you're trying to be." She said nothing. Silence had kept her alive this long. The rival laughed softly and leaned closer. "Be careful who you look at," she whispered. "Some things don't belong to you." The threat was casual, almost bored, and that made it worse. The afternoon dragged, tension coiling tighter with every hour. By the final bell, her head ached from restraint. She left quickly, but the pull followed, steady and insistent, leading her toward the empty courtyard between wings. A memory surfaced uninvited, sharp as broken glass. A forest clearing, moonlight caught in leaves, a boy's hand in hers as promises were made without words. She had been smaller then, braver in ways that mattered less. The memory burned, demanding attention, and she shoved it down with practiced cruelty. Her phone vibrated in her pocket, a warning she ignored. Home could wait. Safety could wait. Right now, every instinct told her she was standing on the edge of something irreversible. She watched his throat move as he swallowed, watched his fingers flex as if resisting an urge of his own. Around them, the courtyard seemed to hold its breath. Even the air felt charged, humming like a held note. She wondered who would break first, and what the cost would be when it happened. He was there, waiting, as if he had known she would come. His expression was guarded now. Curiosity sharpened into intent. "Do I know you?" he asked, voice low. The question hurt more than she expected. She shook her head once. "No." Something in him rejected that answer. He stepped closer, and the world tilted. Her wolf surged, magic flared, and the air between them thickened with something ancient and undeniable. If you're drawn to stories about hidden power and forbidden bonds, stay with this one. What comes next will change everything. Somewhere, deep beneath fear, a truth stirred awake, patient and hungry, waiting for the moment she could no longer pretend it wasn't there anymore at all. Her control snapped for half a second. Just enough. His eyes widened as he inhaled, scent recognition striking hard, and she realized with sick certainty that he finally knew something was wrong. The first rule shattered, and there would be no taking it back. Chapter 2. The Alpha Who Forgot Her. He did not follow her right away. That was the first mercy of the day, though she did not recognize it as such until later. She left the courtyard with her pulse in her throat, feet carrying her on instinct alone, moving fast enough to outrun questions but not memory. By the time she reached the tree line behind the school, her hands were shaking. She pressed her palms to the rough bark of an old oak and breathed until the world steadied. The wolf inside her prowled, restless and agitated, circling the same thought over and over. He knows something is wrong. Magic still crackled under her skin, sparks snapping and fading as she forced it down with sheer will. Control returned slowly, reluctantly, like a tide that did not want to retreat. She should have gone home. Instead, she stayed, because part of her had been waiting for this moment for years, no matter how fiercely she denied it. She remembered him before the power, before the title. A boy with dirt under his nails and laughter too big for his body, who had sworn, without understanding the weight of the word, that he would always find her. They had been children then, hiding in the forest between worlds, trading secrets they did not yet know were dangerous. She had loved him in the uncomplicated way only children could. Then the forgetting had come. blood, magic, and grief, woven together by desperate hands. Her mother had cried as she carved the spell, whispering apologies into the night. It was the only way to keep him alive. It was the only way to keep her hidden. Now he stood on the other side of that spell, grown and powerful, wearing a future that did not include her. At the far edge of the grounds, he leaned against a stone wall, pretending to check his phone. She felt him before she saw him, awareness snapping into place like a pulled wire. His presence pressed against her senses, heavy and magnetic, and her wolf answered with a low, furious hunger. He looked up when she stepped closer, eyes narrowing again, that same confusion sharpening into something more dangerous. Interest. "You don't smell human," he said bluntly, because subtlety had never been a werewolf's strength. His tone was not accusing, but it was not kind either. It was the voice of someone used to being obeyed. She chose her words carefully. "Neither do you." A corner of his mouth twitched despite himself. Then his expression hardened, as though amused reactions were weaknesses he could not afford. "You avoided my question." She met his gaze this time, forcing her shoulders back, summoning every lesson her mother had drilled into her. "I don't know you." The lie tasted bitter. It always did. Something flashed across his face, irritation laced with something closer to disappointment. "That's strange," he said. "Because it feels like I should." He paused, nostrils flaring as he breathed her in again. "And my instincts are rarely wrong." Her heart stumbled. This was the edge she had feared, the place where instinct collided with enchantment. She could not let him push further. "Not here. Not now." Before she could respond, laughter drifted toward them, light and musical. The rival approached with easy confidence, slipping into his space as though she belonged there. Her hand brushed his arm possessively, and the wolf inside him calmed at the familiar contact. The rival's eyes flicked to her, sharp and assessing. "There you are," she said to him sweetly. "I've been looking everywhere." His attention wavered, torn between them, and she felt the bond strain, thin but unbroken. The rival noticed the hesitation. Course she did. Her smile tightened by a fraction, calculation replacing charm. "We were just talking," he said too quickly. "She." Nobody," the rival finished smoothly, never taking her eyes off her. "I know." She tilted her head. "You should be careful wandering alone near the woods. Accidents happen." The threat slid under her skin, cold and deliberate. She held the rival's gaze, refusing to flinch, even as her wolf bristled and her magic coiled defensively. "Thanks for the concern." He frowned, sensing the tension without understanding it. "You should go," he said to her, almost reluctantly. "Before curfew." She nodded once and turned away, forcing herself not to look back. Each step felt like tearing something loose from her chest. She made it 10 paces before his voice stopped her again. "What's your name?" he asked. She closed her eyes. Names had power. Names created threads. But denying him now would only sharpen his suspicion. "Ari," she said quietly, offering the shortened version, the safer lie. "Ari," he repeated, testing the sound, as if it might unlock something hidden. I know who you are," she interrupted softly, because that truth cost her nothing and hurt him more than the lie ever could. She left before he could reply. That night sleep brought no rest. Dreams rose unbidden, vivid and cruel. She stood in the old clearing again, moonlight silvering leaves, a boy's hands warm around hers. Promises pressed against her ribs, aching to be remembered. She woke with a gasp, magic flaring dangerously close to the surface. Across town, he woke at the same moment, heart pounding, the echo of her name on his tongue without knowing why. By morning, rumors had begun to move. Whispers followed her through the halls, subtle but sharp. Someone had seen her with him. Someone had noticed the way the air changed. The rival watched from a distance, satisfaction gleaming in her eyes. In the West Wing, elders spoke in low voices, unease creeping into their discussions. Anomalies were not tolerated. Unknowns were threats. By lunch, the rival had made her decision. She cornered a teacher aligned with the council, her words honeyed and precise, planting a seed that would not be ignored. "There's a girl," she said lightly. "She doesn't belong here." That afternoon, as the final bell rang, Ari found a note slipped into her locker, the paper humming faintly with borrowed magic. "Report to room 317. Lone." Her blood ran cold. She knew that room. Everyone did. Room 317 was where secrets ended, and she had just been summoned. The second rule began to crack, and this time, it would not be enough to pretend nothing had changed. Chapter 3: Blood, Magic, and the First Lie. Room 317 smelled like antiseptic and old wards, the kind layered so thick they left a metallic taste on the tongue. Ari felt it the moment she stepped inside, magic recoiling instinctively, wolf slinking back into the shadows of her mind. The door closed behind her with a final, deliberate click that sounded too much like a lock. The teacher sat behind the desk, fingers folded, expression carefully neutral. Council-aligned witches always looked like that, pleasant, patient, and endlessly dangerous. A silver charm rested against her collarbone, faintly glowing as it tested the air. Ari kept her face calm, heart hammering. "Sit," the woman said gently. Ari did. The chair was too close to the desk, the space designed to intimidate. She reminded herself to breathe, to ground, to anchor. Panic would only betray her faster. "We've had some concerns," the teacher continued, voice smooth. "Unusual energy fluctuations, behavioral inconsistencies, associations that raise questions." Ari nodded once, saying nothing. Silence had saved her before. The charm pulsed brighter. The woman's eyes sharpened. "You were seen with the alpha heir yesterday." The word heir landed heavy. Ari felt the wolf stir despite herself, hackles rising. "He spoke to me," she said carefully. "That's all." "Interesting," the teacher murmured. "Because he doesn't speak to just anyone." Pause stretched. Ari felt the test building, magic pressing closer, probing for cracks. She knew what was coming before it happened, and still her pulse spiked when the woman slid a small blade across the desk. "Accidents happen at school," the teacher said mildly. "We like to know what kind." Ari stared at the blade. One cut. That was all it would take. Which blood glowed differently. Wolf blood healed too fast. Either would condemn her. Her mother's voice echoed in her head. "Do not bleed." "I'm human," Ari said, forcing steadiness into her tone. "I bruise. Break. I bleed like anyone else." "Then you won't mind proving it." The open loop yawned wide. Ari weighed her options in a heartbeat. Refusal meant suspicion. Compliance meant exposure. There was only one path left, narrow and brutal. She reached for the blade and sliced her palm before the teacher could stop her. Pain flared sharp and bright. Blood welled, dark and convincingly ordinary. She clenched her fist, suppressing instinct, forcing her magic to bind instead of glow, her wolf to still instead of heal. The charm flickered. Once. The teacher leaned forward, studying the blood, disappointment flashing across her face before being carefully masked. "You're reckless," she said coolly. "That could have ended badly." Ari met her gaze, breath shallow. "I told you. I'm human." The silence stretched again. Finally, the teacher waved a hand dismissively. "You may go. But be warned, attention is a dangerous thing. Choose your associations wisely." Ari stood on shaking legs and left before the woman could change her mind. The moment she was clear of the wards, she pressed her injured hand to her chest, letting her magic seal the wound, letting her wolf snarl in relief. The lie had worked. Barely. Word spread anyway. By the end of the day, eyes followed her openly. Whispers no longer bothered to hide. She caught fragments as she passed. Dangerous, strange, wrong. The rival moved through it, all like a queen surveying her court, satisfaction curling her lips when their gazes met. He found her by the lockers, tension etched into his posture. "What happened?" he demanded quietly. "You vanished." She shook her head. "It's nothing." "That's not an answer." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "They're watching you." "I know," she said, because denying it would insult them both. Something in him shifted. Guilt maybe. Or instinct finally breaking through denial. "If you're in trouble because of me." "Don't," she interrupted. "You didn't do anything." That was another lie, and this one hurt worse. The rival appeared before he could respond, looping her arm through his possessively. "We're late," she said brightly. To Ari she added, "Careful, Ari. Not everyone gets second chances." As they walked away, the bond tugged painfully, stretching thin but unbroken. Ari pressed her injured hand against her side, grounding herself in the ache. That night the wound reopened. She woke gasping, blood soaking the sheets, magic spiraling out of control. The suppression spell had consequences, and they were coming due. She stumbled into the bathroom, bracing herself against the sink as power flared, cracking the mirror with a sound like breaking ice. Across town, he jerked awake at the same moment, chest tight, the phantom pain of a wound he did not have burning in his palm. By morning, the council convened in secret. An anomaly had slipped through their fingers, and that made them nervous. Orders were drafted. Surveillance increased. The rival watched it all unfold, eyes bright with anticipation. She had forced the first lie. The rest would come easier. If you feel the pull of secrets unraveling and destinies colliding, stay with this story. Every truth has a cost, and Ari has only just begun to pay it. When Ari returned to school, a red sigil burned faintly on her locker door. It meant investigation. It meant judgment. And it meant that the next time she bled, there would be no room left to lie. Chapter 4. The Price of Being Seen. The red sigil on Ari's locker pulsed faintly, like a living thing. Most students passed without noticing it, but those who mattered did. Witches glanced away too quickly. Werewolves stiffened, noses twitching as if they could smell judgment in the air. The mark was subtle, deniable, but it was a warning all the same. She did not touch it. Touching council magic was an invitation she could not afford. Instead, she stood very still, heart counting out uneven beats, while the weight of being watched pressed down on her shoulders. Investigation meant eyes everywhere. It meant spells woven into doorframes, charms hidden in classroom corners, teachers listening too closely when she spoke. It meant that one mistake would no longer be an accident. Her phone buzzed. "Stay calm," her mother's message read. "Do nothing that draws attention." As if that were still possible. First period passed in a blur. Ari felt the wards before she saw them. Thin threads of detection stretched across the room like spider silk. She adjusted her breathing, dampened her magic, forced her wolf into stillness. Every answer she gave was careful, every movement deliberate. Survival had become a performance, and the audience was merciless. Between classes, she sensed him again. He leaned against a pillar near the stairwell, arms crossed, jaw tight. He had not looked for her before today. Of that she was certain. Now his attention found her instantly, locking on with unnerving precision. The bond thrummed, low and insistent, and her pulse answered before she could stop it. "You're marked," he said quietly as she approached. Her gaze flicked to the sigil behind her, then back to him. "So are half the students here." "Eventually." "That's not true," he replied. "And you know it." She hesitated, the open loop yawning again. Telling him anything would invite questions she could not answer. Saying nothing would only sharpen his resolve. She chose the smallest truth she could manage. It's routine. He studied her face, clearly unconvinced. They don't mark routine. They mark threats. The word settled between them, heavy and dangerous. Ari felt her wolf bristle, felt magic stir defensively. Then they're wrong. Are they? He asked, not accusing, just searching. Because ever since you showed up, things have been off. Before she could respond, the rival's laughter cut through the moment. There you are, she said brightly, sliding into his space with practiced ease. Her eyes flicked to Ari, sharp and cold. You shouldn't loiter near council marks. People get ideas. He frowned at the interruption but did not pull away. I was just busy, the rival finished, squeezing his arm. We all are. To Ari she added softly. Some of us just hide it better. Ari stepped back, breaking the fragile connection. The bond snapped taut, vibrating with unspoken tension. She turned away before either of them could say more, the taste of iron sharp in her mouth. The test came sooner than she expected. In chemistry, a ward misfired. It was subtle, a flicker of heat, a shimmer in the air, but Ari felt it instantly. The detection spell latched onto her magic like a hook, dragging it toward the surface. Panic flared. She clamped down hard, forcing her power inward, but the effort sent pain lancing through her skull. Across the room, glass beakers rattled. The teacher froze. Students stared. Ari acted on instinct. She let the wolf rise just enough to mask the surge, shifting the energy, redirecting it through muscle and bone. The move was dangerous, blending lines that were never meant to cross, but it worked. The ward sputtered and died, confused. She sagged against the table, breath coming fast. Silence stretched, thick and terrible. Then the bell rang, jarring everyone back into motion. Conversations erupted, nervous and loud, but Ari barely heard them. Her hands were shaking. She had been seen. Not everyone had missed it. He stood near the door, eyes dark, scent sharp with concern and something closer to anger. That wasn't normal, he said as she passed. I told you, she replied, forcing calm. I'm human. The lie rang hollow between them. That afternoon, the council summoned her again, this time with witnesses. 2 witches and a werewolf elder waited in room 317, their combined presence suffocating. The rival lingered outside the door, satisfaction barely concealed. We observed a surge, one witch said flatly. Explain it. Ari felt the weight of their scrutiny, the open loop stretching impossibly wide. One wrong word would end everything. She thought of her mother, of the forest, of promises broken to keep her alive. I panicked, she said quietly. I don't like being watched. The werewolf elder sniffed the air, frowning. Fear can do strange things. The council members exchanged glances. Doubt flickered, but doubt was enough for now. You will be monitored, the witch said. Closely. When Ari left, her knees nearly gave out. She had survived another test, but the cost was mounting. Her control was fraying. The bond was tightening. And the rival was no longer content with whispers. That evening, as Ari walked home, footsteps followed her into the woods. She turned just as the rival stepped from the shadows, magic crackling openly now, eyes bright with malice. You're running out of room, she said softly. And I'm done waiting. Ari felt her wolf rise fully for the first time in years, magic flaring in answer. Being unseen was no longer an option. And whatever happened next would make sure the whole world finally noticed. Chapter 5. When the bond starts bleeding through. The rival did not attack. That was the first surprise. She simply stood there beneath the trees, moonlight catching in her hair, magic humming openly around her like a dare. Ari felt the forest lean in, every instinct screaming that this moment mattered more than the ones before it. "You could have exposed me," Ari said, voice steady despite the storm inside her. The rival smiled. "Where's the fun in that?" She circled slowly, boots crunching against leaves. "I want him to choose. And he won't, not while you're hiding what you are." Ari's wolf snarled, pushing forward, furious at the implication. Her magic answered in kind, heat rippling through the air. "You don't get to decide that." "Oh, but I do," the rival replied lightly. "Because I'm not the one breaking the rules. You are." Before Ari could respond, the rival stepped back, melting into the shadows as if she had never been there at all. The forest went still again, but the warning lingered, sharp and poisonous. This was no longer a game of whispers. It was a countdown. That night the bond surged. Ari dreamed of running, wind tearing past her, earth solid beneath her feet, power thrumming through every vein. She was not alone. He ran beside her, matching her stride, laughter breaking free as if it had been trapped for years. When he reached for her hand, the dream sharpened, becoming painfully real. She woke with a gasp, heart racing, the phantom warmth of his touch burning into her palm. Across town, he woke at the same moment, breath coming hard, the echo of her name caught between confusion and longing. He sat up in bed, hand clenched, pulse pounding. Something was wrong. Something had been wrong for a while now, and he was done pretending otherwise. School avoidance became impossible. They were paired in history, a cruel twist of scheduling that left them seated too close, knees brushing under the desk. Every contact sent sparks skittering through Ari's nerves. She focused on the board, on the drone of the lecture, on anything except the way his presence filled the room. "You feel it too," he murmured under his breath. She stiffened. "Feel what?" "This," he said, and his knee pressed deliberately against hers. Her control slipped. Just a fraction. Enough. The room seemed to tilt. Her magic flared instinctively, the wolf rising to meet the bond's pull. She bit back a gasp, fingers digging into her notebook hard enough to crease the paper. "Stop," she whispered. "You're going to get us both in trouble." "Then tell me why," he replied, voice low and rough. "Tell me why every instinct I have is screaming that you matter." She could not. The truth crowded her throat, desperate and dangerous. Instead, she shook her head. "You don't want this. That's not your decision," he said softly. The bell rang, breaking the moment like glass. He leaned back, jaw tight, clearly restraining himself. Across the room, the rival watched, eyes blazing with triumph. The bond was no longer subtle. It was bleeding through, visible to anyone who knew what to look for. By the time the full moon rose that night, the tension was unbearable. Werewolves gathered on the West Wing grounds, rituals murmured and ancient, power thrumming through the air. Ari stayed far away, locked in her room, wards stacked thick around her. The moon tugged at her, insistent and bright, calling to the wolf she had caged for so long. She pressed her forehead to the window, breathing through the ache. Just one night, she told herself. Just get through this. A knock sounded at her door. Her heart dropped. She knew before she opened it. He stood there, eyes glowing faintly silver, control stretched thin. "You're not answering your phone," he said. "I couldn't ignore this anymore." "You shouldn't be here," she replied. "If anyone sees you, I don't care." He stepped closer, the bond flaring violently now, raw and undeniable. "Tell me the truth, please." The open loop snapped tight. Ari stared at him, at the boy she had loved, at the alpha he was becoming, and felt the weight of every choice she had ever made. One word could change everything. Silence could destroy them both. He took a step back. "You need to leave." His expression shattered. Hurt flashed across his face, sharp and unguarded. That's it, he asked. After everything. You don't know everything, she said, voice breaking despite herself. And if you did, you'd wish you didn't. The moonlight intensified, flooding the room with silver. His scent changed. Recognition, shock, something feral and odd. He inhaled sharply. You're bleeding, he said. She looked down. A thin line of blood traced her palm, glowing faintly before she could stop it. Witch blood and wolf blood, intertwined and unmistakable. His eyes widened. What are you? Footsteps echoed in the hall outside. Voices. The rivals' laughter drifted closer. Ari met his gaze, fear and resolve colliding in her chest. I'm the reason this can't happen, she whispered. And as the door handle turned, she knew there was no hiding left. Not from him, not from the council, and not from the destiny clawing its way to the surface at last. Chapter 6: The Rivals' War. The door did not open. That was the second surprise of the night. The handle rattled once, twice, then stilled, as if whoever stood outside had decided patience would be more effective than force. Ari wiped her bleeding palm against her jeans, magic sealing the wound with a sharp sting that made her hiss. The glow faded, but the damage was done. He had seen enough. Too much. You should go, she said again, quieter now, urgency threading every word. Please. He didn't move. His eyes were fixed on her hand, on her face, on the pieces that no longer fit the story he had told himself. They're coming for you, he said finally. I can feel it. So can I. The knock came again, polite, deliberate. Council courtesy. Ari's stomach twisted. If he stayed, they would see him. If he left, she would face them alone. Either choice cut deep. I'll handle this, she said, forcing steadiness she did not feel. You can't be involved. His jaw clenched. You don't get to decide that either. Before she could argue, the rival's voice drifted through the door, sweet and sharp. We just want to talk, Ari. No need to be afraid. The lie rang louder than any alarm. He stepped back, torn, instincts warring visibly across his face. Finally, with a look that promised this wasn't over, he slipped out the window, vanishing into the night just as the door opened. 3 figures entered. 2 witches, 1 werewolf elder. Power filled the room, heavy and oppressive. The rival lingered in the doorway, eyes gleaming with satisfaction. We sensed a surge, one witch said, gaze sweeping the room. Care to explain? Ari lifted her chin. The moon makes people restless. The elder sniffed, brow furrowing. There was blood. Mine, Ari replied evenly. I cut myself earlier. The rival smiled. Convenient. The witch stepped closer, charm glowing brighter as it tested the air. Ari felt it brush against her magic, probing, invasive. She held still, every muscle locked, forcing her power to lie dormant. For a heartbeat it worked. Then the rival moved. She brushed past the witch as if by accident, fingers grazing Ari's wrist. The contact sent a jolt through her, magic flaring in reflex, wolf surging to the surface. The charm blazed white-hot. There, the rival said softly. Did you feel that? The room erupted into motion. Spells snapped into place, wards slamming down around Ari like invisible chains. She cried out as power crashed against her defenses, ripping control from her grasp. The wolf roared, furious and afraid, magic spiraling wildly in response. She's a hybrid, the elder growled. Impossible. Rare, the rival corrected. And dangerous. The word sealed Ari's fate. Council law was clear. Hybrids disrupted balance. They were unpredictable. They were executed or worse. Restraints tightened, magic biting into her skin. Ari fought, instinct screaming, but exhaustion dragged at her limbs. The room blurred, voices overlapping in harsh fragments. Contain her. Notify the council. By morning. A new voice cut through the chaos. Stop. He stood in the doorway, chest heaving, eyes blazing silver. Power rolled off him unchecked, raw and commanding. Every werewolf in the room stiffened instinctively. She's under my protection, he said, voice shaking with restrained fury. The rival spun toward him. You can't. I can, he snapped. And I will. The witches hesitated. The elder's gaze sharpened. You would defy the council for her? He didn't look away from Ari. I already have. The open loop snapped tight as the room teetered on the edge of violence. Alliances shifted, power crackled, and Ari felt something irreversible locking into place. The rival's smile returned, slow and cruel. Then let the council decide, she said. At dawn. The words echoed like a death sentence. As they dragged Ari away, she met his gaze one last time. Fear and relief tangled painfully together. Whatever happened next would change everything. By morning, the rivals' war would be public, and survival would no longer be enough. Chapter 7. The Truth That Breaks the Alpha. They held her beneath the old auditorium, where sound went to die and secrets were meant to stay buried. Iron bands circled her wrists, etched with runes that burned when she breathed too deeply. Ari learned quickly how to breathe shallow, how to make herself small again, even as everything inside her raged. Dawn crept closer. She felt it the way a tide feels the moon, inevitable, pulling, merciless. Footsteps approached. Not the measured cadence of council guards, but something faster, angrier. The door slammed open, Ward screaming in protest as he forced his way inside. Power rolled off him unchecked now. Alpha authority raw and untempered. Let her go, he said. The guards hesitated. Werewolves bowed their heads without realizing it. Witches tightened their grips on spells, uncertain. He crossed the room in 3 strides and stopped in front of her, eyes dropping to the restraints, jaw tightening with every breath. You're hurt, he said. I'm alive, she replied quietly. That has to be enough. He shook his head, disbelief and fury warring in his expression. They're calling you a threat. They're not wrong, she said, and the truth of it cut deeper than any blade. He reached for her, then stopped, as if afraid to touch her now that he knew. Tell me, he said hoarsely. Tell me everything. The open loop yawned wide. Ari closed her eyes, feeling the weight of years pressed down on her chest. If she spoke, there would be no undoing it. Silence had protected him once. Now it would destroy them both. We met when we were children, she began. Before titles. Before packs and councils. Her voice trembled, then steadied. You promised you'd always find me. He went very still. They found us, she continued. The council. Hunters. Someone betrayed our hiding place. Her throat tightened. You were injured. Badly. And they said the only way to save you was to make you forget. His breath hitched. Forget you. Yes. She met his gaze, forcing him to see it. My mother bound the spell herself. Blood and memory woven together. You lived because you forgot. And I stayed hidden because of it. Something in him fractured. He took a step back, hands clenching into fists. Images flickered behind his eyes, running through trees, laughter, a girl with dark hair and stubborn courage. Memories surged, incomplete but insistent, pressing against the spell like a tide. Why didn't you tell me? He whispered. Because I loved you, she said simply. And because remembering would put you in danger again. The room seemed to tilt. He dragged a hand down his face, a sound tearing loose from his chest that was half laugh, half sob. All this time, he said. I thought something was wrong with me. It wasn't you, she replied. It was the choice we made. A slow clap echoed from the doorway. The rival leaned against the frame, eyes bright with triumph. "Beautiful," she said softly. "Truly. I knew there was something poetic about your connection." He spun toward her, fury blazing. "You did this." She smiled. "I finished it." Guard surged forward, but he stepped between them and Ari without hesitation. "Touch her," he warned, voice dropping into something ancient and deadly. "And you answer to me." The rival's gaze flicked between them, calculation sharpening. "You defy the council. Pax. Everything you're meant to be." He didn't hesitate. "If that's the cost." A murmur rippled through the room. Choices like that cracked foundations. Ari felt the bond surge, fierce and bright, binding them tighter than ever before. For one fragile moment, she believed they might survive this. Then the rival spoke again. "The council has already voted," she said lightly. "Execution at dusk." Silence slammed down like a verdict. Ari's heart stuttered. He went very still, a dangerous calm settling over him. "Then there will be war. If you're invested in forbidden bonds and impossible choices, stay with this story. What comes next will demand everything." The rival's smile widened. "Good," she said. "I was hoping you'd say that." As guards closed in and alarms began to sound above them, Ari realized the truth too late. The rival had wanted this all along, not her death but his rebellion. And now there would be no stopping what she had set in motion. Chapter 8. The Siege of Secrets. By the time dusk settled over Blackthorne High, the entire school felt alive with tension. Wards glimmered faintly along hallways, shimmering like a cage no one could see but those who mattered. Every whisper of wind carried the weight of anticipation, and every shadow felt like it had teeth. Ari moved through the halls carefully, knowing she was being watched, her heart hammering in time with a rhythm that belonged to her wolf as much as her own. He was waiting in the courtyard, just beyond the iron gates, his presence radiating control and danger. The alpha who had forgotten her in childhood now loomed large in her reality, every step he took echoing authority. She wanted to run, to hide, to pretend she was just another girl, but the pull of the bond between them yanked her forward, and she could not resist. "Are you ready?" he asked, voice low and dangerous, carrying the weight of everything they had yet to face. "I have no choice," she said. Truth. Survival demanded courage she wasn't sure she possessed. The rival appeared again, as if summoned by the tension itself. Her magic flared along the edges of her body, silver sparks dancing in the dim light. "I see you've decided to play hero," she said, voice dripping with mockery. "Let's see how long that lasts." Ari felt her wolf surge, protective and fierce. Magic coursed through her veins, hot and wild, ready to snap, and she stepped closer to him instinctively, drawing strength from his presence. Together, they formed a line against the forces aligned to destroy her. The council arrived in force, witches and werewolves converging like a storm. Orders snapped through the ranks, spells weaving in the air with deadly precision. Ari realized, as she crouched low and readied herself, that this was no longer just about survival. It was about defiance, about staking her claim in a world that had tried to erase her. The rival struck first. A bolt of silver energy shot from her fingertips, aimed directly at Ari's chest. Ari twisted, barely dodging, feeling the heat graze her arm. Her magic flared, lashing out defensively, forcing the council's spell back on itself with a crack that made the air shiver. He was beside her instantly, movement fluid, powerful. His hand caught hers as they moved together, instinct syncing perfectly with instinct. The bond pulsed between them, violent and unrelenting, making the air hum with raw potential. "Don't hold back," he growled. Ari shook her head. "I can't." "Yes, you can." His command carried an authority that shook her to the core. It was not just his voice, it was his essence, his power, his destiny pulling at hers. Together they struck back, combining magic and wolf, fire and instinct, creating a shield that forced the rival to retreat for the first time. But victory was fleeting. From the shadows, council enforcers surged forward, spells crackling and claws bared. The ground shook under the power of their combined assault. Ari realized that they were outnumbered and outmatched, but the bond between her and him had begun to manifest in ways neither could control. Sparks of raw energy danced between them, tangling like living threads, and she felt a part of him in every strike, every movement. Suddenly the rival shouted, her voice carrying over the chaos. "Stop hiding, hybrid. Show them who you are." Ari faltered, realizing with sick clarity what she had been denying all along. She had hidden her magic, her wolf, her identity, everything that made her extraordinary. But now, the world demanded that she stand as herself or perish. With a deep, trembling breath she let go. Magic erupted from her like a storm breaking, silver and violet flames twisting around her, shielding them both and striking with devastating precision. Her wolf rose fully, fangs bared, eyes glowing amber beneath the moonlight. For the first time in years, Ari embraced her power without apology or fear. He caught her gaze, breathless, awe and something unspoken flickering in his eyes. "Finally," he said. The rival faltered, eyes wide with shock. She had underestimated the hybrid. The council hesitated, sensing the unprecedented power surging between Ari and the alpha. For a heartbeat, time seemed to hold its breath. But the rival was not defeated. She lashed out one last time, magic clawing toward Ari's heart. Ari's wolf roared, magic blazing in answer, and the screen of energy collided with the rival's spell. The explosion rocked the courtyard, throwing everyone to the ground. Dust and smoke filled the air, and when it cleared, Ari stood, trembling, her eyes glowing fiercely in the dim light. The rival lay against the far wall, smoldering robes, her smirk replaced by disbelief. "Impossible," she whispered. Ari's chest heaved, wolf and human alike roaring in triumph and fear. He stepped forward, placing a hand over hers, grounding her, anchoring the surge of energy that threatened to consume her. "You did it," he said, voice low, reverent. "You are unstoppable." She blinked, disbelief mixing with the adrenaline. I had to. Not just to survive," he corrected. "To be seen." The courtyard was silent now, the council too shocked to respond, the rival too wounded to interfere. Ari realized the first true shift had occurred. She was no longer hiding. She was no longer alone. And the bond, fragile and insistent, had begun to rewrite the rules of everything. Yet, as the dust settled and the adrenaline ebbed, Ari felt the tiniest flicker of doubt. The rival's last words lingered, heavy and threatening. "The council has already voted execution at dawn." A chill ran down her spine. The open loop yawned again. Power had been revealed, bonds had tightened, but the war was far from over. And as she met his gaze, she knew one truth for certain. Tomorrow, nothing would be the same. Chapter 9, The Edge of Dawn. The night stretched thin, stretched so tight that every heartbeat sounded like a drum in Ari's chest. Sleep was impossible. Every shadow seemed to twist with threat, every whisper of wind a warning. Her wolf prowled restlessly beneath the surface, impatient, hungry, aware that the dawn would bring a reckoning. He was with her, or close enough that she could feel him. They sat in silence atop the tallest tower of Blackthorne High, the city lights dim beneath them, the moon a silver eye watching over the unfolding chaos. The bond pulsed between them, a living thing that refused to stay contained. Every heartbeat, every breath, carried unspoken truths, memories clawing their way back through the barriers of time and magic. "You're ready," he said quietly, though his jaw tightened, tension coiling through him. "Even if you don't think you are." Ari let the words settle. She wanted to believe them, but fear curled in her stomach, bitter and sharp. "If I fail," her voice faltered. If they take me. You won't, he said firmly. I won't let them. She looked at him, really looked, and saw the alpha beneath the teenager he once was. Strength tempered by instinct, by responsibility, by the unshakable need to protect. And she knew the bond had grown beyond childhood promises. It was something raw, something inevitable, something that could not be denied. The first rays of dawn streaked the sky pink and gold. Somewhere in the school, the rival stirred, her magic humming with lethal precision. The council's whispers became audible now, threads of intrigue stretching, plotting, ready to ensnare anyone who misstepped. Ari's hands trembled slightly, wolf and human caught in an uneasy truce. We can't wait, he murmured, voice low, almost a growl. They're coming. Ari nodded, summoning her courage. Magic flickered at her fingertips, wolf eyes glowing beneath her lids, instincts sharp and ready. The bond throbbed in response, violent, tethering them together in ways that defied explanation. Together they moved, silent as predators, down the stone stairs, through corridors lined with wards that sparked and hissed as she passed. The rival met them at the grand auditorium, her expression smug, almost serene, as if she had anticipated every step. But this time Ari was no longer hiding. She was whole, hybrid, dangerous, unyielding. You survived the night, the rival said. Impressive. But survival isn't enough. Not anymore. Then we won't survive, Ari said evenly, voice carrying over the magic-charged air. We'll win. He stepped beside her, shoulders square, alpha presence radiating. Leave now, he said, voice cold. Or face the consequences. The rival's laugh rang, light but cutting. Consequences are my specialty. The council, sensing the approaching confrontation, tightened their invisible noose, spells coiling like serpents. But Ari no longer feared them. She had embraced herself, embraced the bond, embraced the chaos. The wolf, the magic, the memories, they were all part of her now. Then it happened. The rival unleashed a spell, pure and vicious, aimed at severing the bond between Ari and the alpha. The air shimmered violently as power collided, spells crackling like lightning. Ari met it with everything she had, her magic flaring brighter, wolf surging to meet the attack. The clash was more than energy. It was destiny, raw and primal, bending the rules of the council, defying the rival's careful schemes. Sparks of light and shadow twisted in the space between them, illuminating the auditorium with impossible colors, a storm given form. He reached for her, fingers entwining with hers, and the bond reacted, responding with strength they hadn't yet realized it possessed. Memories burst through the haze. Laughter among trees, whispered promises, childhood games, the unspoken recognition that had always lain beneath their lives. The rival staggered back, eyes wide with disbelief. Ari's wolf let out a triumphant howl, merging with the roar of the alpha beside her. Magic and instinct intertwined, creating a barrier so powerful that even the council's wards strained under the force. The rival's spell shattered against it, leaving her unsteady, vulnerable. You underestimated us, he said, voice low and lethal. Always. Ari stepped forward, eyes blazing. This ends now. The rival faltered, rage and fear clashing across her face. Every plan, every manipulation, every whisper she had spread unraveled in the face of their bond, raw and unstoppable. The first light of dawn struck through the windows, silver and gold, illuminating the hybrid girl and the alpha who had remembered. In that moment the balance shifted. The council, the rival, the entire world of Blackthorne High had seen the impossible, and nothing would ever be the same. Ari felt a surge of clarity. She was not just surviving. She was no longer hidden. She was a force, a hybrid, a wolf and a witch and a girl who refused to be erased. And the alpha beside her was no longer a boy who forgot. He was her equal, her bond, her protector, and her mate in ways neither could deny. The rival, cornered and furious, hissed one last threat. "This isn't over." Ari smiled, teeth bared, wolf and human in harmony. "Oh, it is. For you." But even as victory shimmered on the horizon, the council's final judgment loomed. The open loop of their fate remained. Execution, rebellion, power, destiny, all poised to collide in the coming hours. And Ari knew the final act would demand everything. Every secret, every memory, every shred of courage and magic she possessed. The edge of dawn was not just the end of night. It was the beginning of war. Chapter 10. Destiny Unbound. Dawn had broken fully, spilling pale gold light over Blackthorne High, but the courtyard felt like the center of a storm. Council members had gathered, witches in flowing robes, werewolf elders with eyes like flint. The rival stood at the forefront, chest lifted, grin sharp and predatory. Ari felt the weight of all eyes on her, judging, measuring, calculating. Execution had been scheduled for this morning, and every second ticked closer to the inevitable. She did not tremble. Her wolf prowled beneath her skin, taut and ready, magic coiling through her like liquid fire. She glanced at him, the alpha who had remembered, who had reclaimed the threads of their childhood bond, who now stood as her protector and partner in defiance. His presence steadied her like nothing else could. "You ready?" he asked, voice low, a growl hiding beneath the calm. "I'm not surviving anymore," she said. "I'm fighting." The council murmured. Their leader stepped forward, eyes sharp. "Hybrid," she said, voice crisp. "You have broken council law repeatedly. Your existence destabilizes the delicate balance between witches and werewolves. We have no choice but to enact judgment." Ari's eyes narrowed. "Choice," she repeated, voice calm but carrying the weight of a storm. "You mean your control. You've spent centuries deciding who lives and dies, who rules and who hides. Not anymore." The rival laughed, sharp and cold. "You think you can defy the council? A hybrid? A girl?" "I am more than a girl," Ari said. Magic flared at her fingertips, wolf energy radiating in a visible pulse. "And I am not alone." The alpha stepped forward, silver light glinting in his eyes. "No one touches her," he said, voice a thunderclap that silenced the courtyard. "And if you try, you answer to me." For a heartbeat, the council wavered. They had never faced such a hybrid, such a bond, such raw defiance intertwined with power they could not measure. Ari felt the wolf rise fully, fangs bared, body humming with magic and instinct. Her confidence, her control, her identity, all merged into one unstoppable force. The rival lunged, magic slashing through the air, sharp and lethal. Ari met it with everything she had. Fire and shadow collided, spells rebounding, wards cracking under the intensity of the battle. Sparks of energy danced across the courtyard, illuminating the faces of the council, the rival, and the alpha. He moved beside her, hand in hers, bond blazing like a tether of light. Their magic intertwined, wolf and witch, alpha and hybrid, creating a shield that even the rival could not penetrate. Every strike she threw was met with deflection, counter, and finally, force beyond her reckoning. "You're finished," Ari said, voice sharp as a blade. "This ends now." The rival's eyes widened. Her smirk faltered. For the first time, fear touched her features. "Impossible," she whispered. "You underestimated us," he said, voice low and dangerous. "Always." Ari pressed forward, wolf and magic roaring in unison. She struck with precision, forcing the rival to stumble back against the council's wards. The elders tried to intervene, but the alpha's presence was absolute, commanding enough that even the most stubborn witches hesitated. In a final surge, Ari unleashed a torrent of combined power, witch and wolf, instinct and intellect. The rival was thrown to the ground, wards splintering around her, magic flickering like dying embers. For the first time, she truly saw Ari. Not a threat to manipulate, not a girl to deceive, but a force that could not be ignored. Silence fell over the courtyard. The council, shaken, retreated, murmuring, eyes wide with disbelief. The rival lay panting, her energy spent, her schemes undone. The alpha caught Ari, steadying her as her wolf calmed, magic simmering down into a controlled pulse. "You did it," he murmured, voice rough with awe. "I didn't just survive," she said, voice steady. "I won." He smiled, faint but full of something that had been missing for years: relief, recognition, and love. The bond thrummed between them, solid and unbreakable, stronger than any council, stronger than fear. The rival, defeated but defiant, hissed, "This isn't over." Ari stepped forward, wolf and magic coiled, eyes blazing. "It is for you." As the sun climbed higher, the school, the council, and the rival realized something undeniable. Nothing would ever be the same. Ari had claimed her identity, her power, her destiny. The alpha beside her had reclaimed his memories, his bond, and his choice. Together they had rewritten the rules, proving that legacy, law, and fear could not bind what was meant to be. The final open loop closed, not with destruction but with revelation. Ari and the alpha stood together, victorious yet tempered by the battle, aware that the world would always challenge them. But no longer would they hide, no longer would they bend. She raised her eyes to him, wolf amber and human brown merging, and whispered, "We're just getting started." He took her hand, tightening it, silver light dancing in his eyes. Together. And for the first time, the sun didn't just rise. It heralded freedom, power, and a love that had survived memory, magic, and blood. The war was over. The council's judgment had failed. The rival had been undone. And Ari, hybrid, wolf, witch, and unbound, had claimed the destiny that had always been hers. The bond glimmered, alive and unbreakable, a promise that whatever came next, they would face it together.